here to talk about the new police. We're here to talk about the new police chief station. I can't say that.
No, it's got nothing to do with the chief. It's just a new police station.
Andy,
yeah.
That's why I need a vacation.
Yeah, that's right.
Hi, Casselberrians. It is now time to have a casual conversation for the beneficial good of our community. The show you are about to listen to is called What's Up, Casselberry? And now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you your hosts, Andy and Drew.
Oh, and don't forget that lovely producer, Robin.
What's up, podcast listeners? Welcome back to Casselberry's favorite podcast. It's the What's Up, Casselberry podcast. Andy and Drew here. Welcome to episode number 87.
Drew, it's almost like you're singing that introduction. I love it, but don't want you to continue it.
I kind of had a Price is Right, sort of the old school. And now, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right.
Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Oh, man. I was actually just talking the other day. We're going to get, before we even introduce ourselves, listeners, we're going to give a little fun fact about Drew here. I was talking the other day, when you were sick as a child, Robin, is this you maybe when you were sick as a child? Did you just love and get soothed by watching Bob Barker and The Price is Right? I know I did. That was like my go-to, because it was the only thing on. It was that or soap operas. And so it was like, all right, Price is Right. Here we go.
I just remember watching Maury Povich.
You like the trash TV. I got
Well,
you.
back then it wasn't that trashy.
What about you, Andy? You were obviously across the pond. What was the local trashy daytime TV?
Yeah, I don't really remember the trashy daytime TV. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't watch it. It just means that it was so long ago I can't remember. But yeah, it's funny. We do have go-to things when we're not feeling too great.
We do. Well, listener, I hope
my new go-to thing when I'm not feeling great is past episodes of the What's Up Casselberry podcast.
There it is.
Just like that, I'm feeling better again.
Excellent. Yes, please go back and listen to any of our 86 previous episodes. We are a weekly podcast. We produce and lay new episodes on you every single Tuesday, led by our producer, Robin, and my co-host, Andy Searles. We are friends, co-hosts, and citizens of Casselberry, Florida, who like to have conversations each and every week for the good of you listeners, as well as to talk about all the great things happening in our city. And we have a fantastic conversation coming up in just a minute. Robin, you are headed on vacation very soon, so you've got double the work this week to produce back-to-back episodes. Tell us about going off the grid. What's your plan?
My plan is to do nothing.
Good. Are you going off the grid? Are you going to actually disconnect from one of your 17 jobs?
Yes, all the jobs are not happening, and I haven't had a vacation in 5 years. But this week, like you said, I have to do all the work to just be able to not work.
I know. I always say the busiest days of the year are the days before vacation. But Drew, you want to have a little bet? I bet that even though Robin is staying away from stuff, she'll still text us because she'll miss us. Right, Robin?
Yes.
Oh, that didn't sound very convincing.
I was going to say, I'll put money on that too.
Well, we hope you have a fantastic vacation, Robin. Well deserved, no doubt about it.
Thank you.
And I'm guessing that some of those texts that Andy mentioned will include dad jokes, because we are all about dad jokes on our text thread. We're also about dad jokes on this podcast. It's time for the dad joke of the week. Andy, you're up this week, my friend. You gave us a good one. Robin and I were chuckling about this offline, so you got to share with the people. Who gave you this, or did you just come up with this?
Well, no. I think we both know, Drew, that none of these jokes are original to us. But this is actually from my buddy Doug, who sends me a joke every day just for fun, and it really lifts my spirit and gives me some good energy. This is a different kind of genre of joke. It's probably bad enough to go in the dad joke category, but it's told a little bit differently. A thief tried to steal the paintings at the Louvre in Paris.
Oh, really? Yikes.
Yes, I'm sure this is a totally true story, Drew. But do you know what happened?
No, tell me what happened.
He was caught 2 blocks away when he ran out of gas. Do you know what he said?
No, what'd he say?
He said, this art thief in Paris. I have no money to buy the gas to make the Van Gogh. But I tried because I had nothing to lose.
Wow.
That is a masterpiece of a joke.
Oh, Robin with the pun on the pun. The masterpiece of the joke. I love it.
Yep. You really sold that one. That was a 4-for-1, listener. That was 4 jokes within one. We might have to post that on our social media feed so you can fully embrace
appreciate its beauty. Now, in England, where I was growing up, and I'm not quite sure where this comes from, but we would call this a shaggy dog story of a joke.
A shaggy dog. Okay.
That is not what we. Okay, cool.
A shaggy dog story.
Shaggy dog.
I have no idea what the origin of that is. I will find out and let you know next time.
Listener, we may have to have a new segment, which is the translation of words and phrases that come from England.
This podcast is very cultured with Andy on it.
Yes.
Can I tell you my most embarrassing moment? I think I can probably say this on air. If not, Robin, you can erase it. But on my first week when I moved to the US, is in California, just get my office set up, all that kind of stuff, getting some stationery, pens, pencils, all that kind of stuff. And I went to the secretary, and I was working at a church at the time, and I thought I had everything I needed, but I didn't. And I'd made a mistake with my pencil and needed to erase it. And so I went to her and said, excuse me, Laurie, her name was Laurie, do you have a rubber that I could use? Because, of course, rubber is a razor in England. And she kind of looked at me like, no, I don't. Who's this guy that we've hired?
Oh, man. Good. And this was, you were on church staff?
Yeah. This was man. Day 3 or something.
That's a great way to break the ice. You have a rubber. That's fantastic.
Do I have to put an explicit mark on this button? No,
yeah, we really might.
Yeah, like the Grammys, the little beat button.
It is now time for your local update about things happening in your community. It is now time for Casselberry in the News.
Today's news segment is in regards to the new police station that is in the process of having been purchased and planned to be built. Andy, this is really exciting. The old bowling alley, I remember bowling at the old bowling alley off of 436 there, and I guess technically almost Fern Park, is going to be the location for the new police station. What does this mean both for the current station that's located right there on Lake Concord, the time frame, any other details that our listeners will be excited to note?
Yeah, I've heard a rumor that they're hoping to get it built and up and running and into it in the next couple of years, which would really be fantastic for our community, for our police, and for our city as a whole. I understand that the old building, which has been there a number of years ago and wasn't perhaps built as well as it could have been, is going to become property of the city as it is now. And they're going to decide what they want to do with it. And I think the dream is that they would be able to build a series of nice restaurants there overlooking the lake and just expand that area of land that they already own with the new apartments where Robin lives, with City Hall, with beautiful Lake Concord Park. And that would really be a gem and a jewel in our community's space if they could do that.
That would really kind of supplement the downtown feel, that things are walkable and it's a destination location there right around Lake Concord there. I agree completely. I hope that happens. So you said the perhaps the new station would be built in the next couple of years. From your conversations with folks on the inside, you have some connections there with the police. Are there preliminary plans that are taking place, architecture, that kind of stuff right now?
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, when you said when I have plans with those on the inside, you're talking about friends in the police,
not the jail,
not in jail. But yeah, no, the plans are in place. I've seen the schematic. In fact, they shared them at a recent city council meeting, so they're viewable to the public. Really nice, a lot more secure, a lot more central, a lot more organized for better communication and collaboration, which I think is exactly what you want from your police department. Also, they're building a new community room as well. the different groups in the community can use as well, because they really want this to be a hub of the community. They want it to be a safe, warm, inviting place for the community to come. Because as we said, time and time again, our chief of police and his staff are all very big on this idea of community policing, that all of us have a responsibility to keep our eyes open, see what's going on, offer accountability, those kind of things. So honestly, I'm just super excited. Having it right there in the city, just off 436, makes it easier for officers to get to places quickly when they need to. I think there are plans in the future to move the fire station from Redbug, I forget the number of it, to that location as well, which will allow them to serve our city better. So a lot of thought going into this. It's a really exciting project. And it's one of those little things that's going to make a big difference in our city.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you for that insight. And we look forward to more updates regarding the new police station.
And now, Casselberry, a mental health break with Dulce Merida.
If anxiety feels like it's internally drowning you, try something you've never tried before. Try to experiment. So maybe that's a new recipe, write a poem, paint, or try some kind of project that brings you joy. It can be simple or it can be complex. You can choose, and this is something that you can have control over.
This is the point in the show where we would let one of our podcast partners promote their business. But right now, we don't have a partner. This is a great opportunity for you to get your business, nonprofit, church, social group known among our Casselberry community. We are not doing this to make money, but there is a small fee that helps us pay our bills. If you'd like to be a sponsor, a partner on the What's Up Casselberry podcast, email us at contact@whatsupcasselberry.com.
Welcome back, listeners. We are so glad and excited to have a conversation with a new friend of mine and Andy's, as well as a new member to Central Florida. This is Dr. Chloe Carmichael. Welcome, Chloe. Glad you're here today.
Thanks so much. It's great to be with you, Pastor Drew and Andy.
Chloe, you have been on TV. You've done extensive podcast work and all other sorts of social media. I follow you on Twitter now. How does it feel to be on the biggest stage in Casselberry, Florida?
I'm trying to manage it, but I'm holding on. I did some deep breathing before, and they told me you guys were nice. So I'm just trying to take it as it comes.
That's funny. I was looking at your website and some of your social stuff earlier, and I was kind of expecting to disappoint you with how low quality our podcast is compared to what you're used to. But we are thrilled that you're with us today.
Well, thank you. Really. I mean, it's really great to be with you guys. It is true what Drew said, that I'm new in town, and it's been wonderful to be embraced by the community. So I'm really thankful for the chance to be here with you guys.
We were talking off air about an event that I was involved in leading last Saturday, and we had a producer, quite a famous producer, on the stage. And at the end of his presentation, someone kind of rushed the stage, and even though he wasn't there in person, gave me a script and said, "This is the story of my life. I want you to get this to the producer so that he can make a movie of my life." Now, if we were to make a movie of your life, what would be the title, and what would be some of the highs and lows, the peaks and valleys in that movie?
I think the title would be Make It Happen, because that's what I love to do.
Nice.
As a psychologist, one of my areas of specialization is goal attainment. And when I was 8 years old, I told everybody I was going to live in New York and be on television. And I'm from a small town in Michigan, so all of those things were very unlikely. I don't think anybody in my family had even been to New York or been on television. I just had a second grade teacher, I think, that kind of planted the idea in my head. He was somebody that I think wanted to be a Broadway theater director, and, ended up directing little plays for second graders in Holland, Michigan. So those were definitely the big events for me. And I loved my time in New York. I was there for about 20 years, and then recently came to Florida, and truly it's been the best thing. It was just such a nice phase, of life. There's different chapters of life, and And right now, this feels like the right place to be.
Awesome. What a great story. And I love that. A little shout out to teachers. We've had a couple teachers on our podcast recently, and you never know what kind of difference they make speaking into the lives of the next generation.
Can you have imagined, though, if you'd have told your teachers that one day you want to be on a little podcast in Casselberry? They would have been blown away.
Well, I did actually write to him and tell him when I moved to New York, and he did write back, which was so wonderful. And I didn't write to him again to tell him about how I did eventually also then come to be on TV and write a book, because he also got me interested in. So maybe I'll send him this podcast. Maybe it's time to give him an update.
That's right. Then he'll really make.
Getting to know you and your husband Jim and son Billy was quite the ordeal. Could you share a little bit about just the motivations and why Seminole County? Why did you decide to move?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, I had always imagined that I might ultimately move to Florida one day. So I loved New York City. I was in Manhattan. I loved it. Like 20 years, like I said, like a lifelong just desire to be there. I met my husband there. I got my education there. I just fulfilled so many goals there. I have so much love for New York. But then I also kind of secretly had this thought, like a lot of people in New York, I'm sorry, I apologize if this is like Florida offensive, but a lot of people in New York kind of almost think of Florida as like a satellite of New York, right? Like there's so many New Yorkers that ultimately just come to Florida. And I always just saw myself wanting to do that. I just always knew I'd just be better off in a warm climate and everything else. I had no idea that it would happen so soon. I really saw it as more of like a retirement situation. However, I do have my son, Billy, my husband's and my son, Billy. He's 4 now, almost 5. And last year, I apologize, I might even just get emotional talking about it, because as a mom, it was such an important moment, was that he'd been home with me for all of his life. And then we were planning to put him in, kind of like a preschool 3s program at a certain age. And then that moment came. And a month before he was supposed to start school, the governor of New Jersey made a mandate that all of the kids would have to be wearing a mask to school, even 3-year-old. And my son, like I said, he was 3 at the time. He would have been 3 starting school that September and turning 4 just a couple months later. And I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm aware of these little things we have. Mirror neurons only fire when they see a face. So even if I'm personally feeling very happy, if I see somebody starting to cry, I'm not going to feel sad. But my mirror neurons will make a sad emotion as if they are feeling sad. And that's like the neurological underpinnings of empathy. We also learn a lot by, social cognition and emotional intelligence. But honestly, just truly more, even just on a human level, I was like, I cannot fathom sending a 3-year-old out of the house all day for the first time in his life, where not only he can't see anybody else's face, knowing whether they're smiling or not, but they can't see his face. I really could not do that. And I know everybody has a different situation. Everybody has different needs, but it was really like a strong mama bear feeling in me. I was like, I said to my husband, I remember it vividly. I just walked into his office and I just burst into tears. And I said, I cannot do this. At the same time, we knew that it wasn't right to keep him in the house for another year. Like it was time for him to be out there, with people. And we knew, that Florida was a little different in that regard. So, and I knew I wanted to come to Florida anyway. So then I started researching the schools in Florida, and I am very methodical. And I did a little spreadsheet about, a lot of different factors in schools, and determined that the Geneva School was our desired school, which happens to be here in Seminole County. And I am a Christian, and I do believe in God's plan. And I didn't know it all at the time, but somehow I believe that this is exactly where we were supposed to be. And we're so thankful that we're here.
Over the last 18 months or so of the pandemic, especially when it comes to masks and things like that, everybody has been focused on the virus, which is perhaps appropriate because that's front and center. But what people haven't drawn attention to is the psychological effects of how we're responding to the virus. And I think that's the first time in terms of the mask conversation that I've really heard someone say, hey, this isn't just about the the mask. It's about the emotional and the psychological behind that. But now, as the kind of virus is hopefully fading into the background, people are starting to ask those questions about mental health and how to recover and what has this done to our psyche and those kind of things. And everybody's saying, mental health is really important. It's really an issue right now. But nobody is kind of digging deep into that. Could you talk a little bit about the mental health challenges that we're going to face and are facing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something certainly about the aspect of individuality and, just recognizing ourselves as individuals. And as I was saying, certainly even about the mirror neurons and the ability to read each other socially, which even as adults, I think is very difficult for us to do through masks. But certainly as well for little children, I think it's extremely difficult. There was a study recently that was published, I can't remember where, but it was actually showing that there were even some IQ differences for children where their, primary caregivers were constantly masked. And that could have to do even just with the fact that there's change. When my face moves, you see change. And little children, I mean, adults too, but especially little children, they notice change. So psychologists, when we're trying to understand things about babies and doing psychology studies on babies, we'll measure where their eyes go by what they pay attention to. And their eyes even will just often go to something that's moving, right? And so our mouth is moving, just even moreover, trying to teach reading or speech or any of those things, even just showing somebody how the sounds are made, but even getting out of the space of a formal speech lesson, we learn those things just through experience, just by watching and seeing. And again, that's just the content of language. I'm even personally more interested in the social and the emotional feedback loop that occurs as well, that when a child not only can read other people's faces and have their face read, which are all also obviously important, but also the social learning that happens for a child, that a child learns when you throw somebody a smile, maybe it can even get you out of a sticky situation, right? Or
that's my go-to. That's all I got.
Throw off the cute look or whatever. But I mean, I'm being silly there. But even if it's just learning to show I've been hurt, that made me sad, or learning to show I'm becoming upset. Not only is it important in the moment for those signals to be read, but the child is also learning, does my environment understand and pay attention to the signals around me just overall? And that affects things like the child's investment and connection in communication and society in general, if they think that this is a reliable signal to send. And so they just may not even obviously understand that it's just, temporarily blocked because of a mask. And then I'm not even yet getting into the issues about, phobias and concerns about germs, as well as even your sense of self-esteem. It broke my heart when I was with little Billy, in playgrounds in New York and New Jersey. I would have him at a playground, and everybody, wants to keep their kids 10 feet apart there. And that's fine. I will respect what anybody wants. I'm not trying to force myself on anybody or Billy, but their kids would come over to Billy, and then their parents would run over and tear them away and, kind of give everybody dirty looks and say, stay away. I could tell Billy was internalizing it as if there was something wrong with him. And in fact, this is just anecdotal, but I was reading Billy a storybook the other day, just, and one of the things in the book was about a kid that, was left behind. It was actually a Thomas the Train book where little Percy was not invited on, some outing. And I said to Billy, have you ever felt that way? And he said, I felt that way in New Jersey. And there was never even so anyway, just so many reasons. I hope it doesn't take a psychologist to tell people that best practices would be that we can show our faces, but especially for kids whose brains are literally wiring and trying to acquire, social cognition and self-esteem and their place in society.
Man, that's so good. There's so much rich depth there, listeners, and some real practical tips too on how to raise children. Chloe, Becky, and I are raising a little guy, and I think about that often when I'm trying to model words for him as he's learning language for the first time. Another way in which we have maybe it's not a physical mask, mask, but more of a theoretical mask, would be the rise in technology because of screens, whether it be what we're doing now via Zoom for children with phones, iPads, etc. Screens are, and technology as a way to communicate, but also can be a hindrance. Could you speak to maybe both the negative as well as some of the positive tools when using technology in both what you do and just what you see in other people's relationships?
Sure. Well, I'll start with the shocking. Okay. So to me, the American Pediatric Association, I think it was last year, revised their guidelines about screen time for children under 2, say that they were going from a recommendation of 0 to minimal. And what to me was change was because they realized, to quote, realized that it wasn't practical for parents to have 0. So it wasn't even like they were changing their guideline recommendation because they came to believe that, in fact, minimal amounts of screen time were not problematic, which I would have even kind of been like, if they could have just really said like, our recommendation is 0, but, if you must, keep it minimal. But anyway, they actually changed it to low, moderate, or whatever from 0, again, not because they're thinking about the topic change, but just because they didn't feel it was practical. So my Billy, he's on 0, poor kid, right? Except for we have one TV in our house and it's in the family room, and he gets to watch like movies that we're going to watch together and talk about. But other than that, it's 0. And with social media and screen time, obviously is different from what I think is appropriate social media user. So I'm like 44 years old. So like I didn't grow up with social media. And in fact, I had kind of an ivory tower bias against it for a very long time. But then like maybe, a couple of years ago, I read a book by this man. His name is Bobby Bones, and he's a big radio host and a host of American Idol. And he wrote a book called If You're Reading This, I'm Not Lonely. And he has a very interesting story in that he's describes himself as like a complete introvert and like totally, in his words, socially awkward with people in real life, but that he somehow came to feel that he could actually really relate to people and be himself and be very gregarious on social media. And somehow reading that book helped me to flip the switch and realize I can like really be myself and have relationships on social media. And it actually helped me to like flip a switch. And so now I'm actually able to, be on social media and be there and enjoy it. But from the psychology perspective, I do think that we have to be careful about something called variable reinforcement. So the reason why slot machines at casinos are so addictive is because they have the variable reinforcement. If you always get like a payoff, like on a predictable schedule, it's a less addictive format than if you get a payoff on an unpredictable schedule, which is why slot machines are so addictive. Social media is the same way. We can get a dopamine hit when we get some likes, but it's an intermittent reinforcement schedule. So I'll admit I personally as well, have kind of fallen prey to that there's something about the 24/7 ability to find out if, your message is landing with people or if it's resonating with people.
Yeah, I'm looking at my phone right now and I see the little notification light go off and I'm like, ooh, what did somebody like? And then you click on it.
Disable.
You're immediately disappointed. I need to disable this.
So a book I love is called Make Time. And it was written by some Google engineers that actually created Gmail. And one of the things that they talk about is actually how they specifically deleted the Gmail app from their phones. And they encourage everybody to actually delete the notification features, at least on their phone. And I did that and it helped me a lot.
Just so you know, Chloe, unlike Drew, you have got my full attention on this interview. I don't know why Drew is so distracted, and I do apologize for that. This is really fascinating. And of course, what you're talking about, both in terms of the mental effects of the pandemic, the mental health effects of social media, is not just for kids, it's for everything. It's something we all wrestle with. Wow, Drew, that was really incredible. I feel like we've been drinking from a deep well with those insights from Dr. Chloe. Her insights inspired me, but I know there's even more inspiration to come on this podcast that you are going to provide today.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. This is from Maya Angelou, who talked about this quote, and I'm going to reference Dr. Chloe in a minute with this quote. Maya Angelou said, "If you're always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be." What is normal in the first place, right, listener? If you're always trying to be normal, you'll never know how amazing you can be. You were made intentionally. You were made with purpose. You were made to be amazing. So listener, today, go and be amazing. Thank you, Maya Angelou, for your quote. If you're always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be.
That's fantastic. In fact, Drew, I'm preaching a sermon on that on Sunday, where Jesus actually says very similar words. He says, why be ordinary? Right? That's not what we're supposed to do. So thank you for that. And listener, thank you for listening to us and with us today. I hope that this podcast has been encouraging to you, helpful to you, and insightful to you. We are the What's Up Casselberry podcast. We like to have a casual conversation about our Casselberry community. As always, our show is produced by the vacation-bound Robin. For more information, please check out our website, Facebook page, Instagram feed, podcast feed, all that have the same name, What's Up Casselberry. Like and subscribe to the podcast. Please rate and review us. And until next week, we hope you'll have a great week.